Hello and welcome to another edition of The Family Business. I'm your host, Joe Castiglione Jr. Got my co-host, Isaac Stoops. Today, we got big Ryan Spangler, 3-year starter, member of the Final Four team, Oklahoma legend. I'll throw that one out there. Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's been a while since I've been on campus and been able to do something, a part of the Sooner family, so appreciate it.
No, we're happy to have you, and it's kind of ironic, we're having you on right now. OU's playing right now, and they could use you. We may have to look into cloning you because they could use at least one or two of you on the team right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I every once in a while I get messages from donors and old fans, and it's like, I wish we could find somebody that would do the dirty work that you did. It's hard to find nowadays, and so, when you're playing, everybody wants to talk about who's scoring the most, and so it's been nice to kind of 7-8 years later, the hard work is actually showing that there's roles to do, not just scoring. So
yeah, and that's what's kind of missing a lot, and like you said, college basketball, more specifically OU, but that's what kind of contributed to that special team, Final Four run, Sweet 16 run the year before. Just kind of talk about your role and just kind of talk about how you found yourself in that team among some other stars.
So I can kind of go back to when I transferred from Gonzaga, if you want me to. But
go for it.
Coach Kruger's second year, and so I told Coach Few at Gonzaga, I said I'm gonna transfer back home, play for the team I want to play with. And so I came in, I set a year out, and during that time, Buddy, Isaiah, Jalen, all those guys were freshmen playing as freshmen. I knew going in, hey, these guys are who are going to be my teammates. And so that year I spent working on my craft, trying to figure out what my role is going to be. And so when you look at those guys, they're all scorers. They need the ball in their hands. And so, talking with Coach Kruger, it's like, how can I help this team the best? And rebounding, hustling, being a leader, that's the things that I had to do for that team.
Mm-hmm. How anymore, if you would have came in, you wouldn't have sat a year. Mm-hmm. So how important do you think it was for you and for the team itself to sit out that year, not being in the transfer-free portal?
Well, I look at myself, and going in as a freshman at Gonzaga, I wasn't ready, on the court or off the court maturity-wise. And so that year allowed me to reset, not only work on my craft, but reset as a person, as a student, as a family man, and kind of learn, and grow up right there during that year to figure out who I want to be.
Mm-hmm. Did like the transfer portal obviously is like such a new thing, and like he was saying, you wouldn't have had to sit out that year. So I guess I'm asking, are you a fan of the transfer portal rules now, or do you think there needs to be some sort of guardrails?
Yeah, I could go on and on all day.
Hey, we're here.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a fan. I think there's certain instances where a kid graduates. He's been loyal to his school. He graduates. He can go play somewhere else. But the constant, transferring, I'm not open to. I think you got to get back to where college has some type of loyalty about it. Mm-hmm. Whatever that may be, I don't have the answers for that. But I think that's what's missing in our game now.
I think it really is. I will always argue that the transfer portal has kind of been the bigger fault of between the two of transfer portal versus NIL, of kind of how we got here in college sports as a whole, just because from year to year there is no continuity. And like you said, players are not developing, they're not getting their degree. I mean, I can't imagine going to 4 different schools in 4 years and then trying to walk out of it after school and then be like, oh, what can I do with this?
Right.
If you have a degree.
Yeah, how are you supposed to even develop like that toughness or loyalty, or like what you kind of stood on, you know what I mean,
right,
if you're just at 3-4 different schools every year. So
yeah, you got to go through the valleys, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, life's not going to be fair always. You're not going to get the way you want it. And I think that ties back even into your career of, you get rewarded for being loyal to whoever your employer is, to a certain extent, right? Sometimes a move is necessary, but when you get to your career, you've got to be loyal, and it'll be rewarding.
Yeah, sure. I agree to that. And then I think that's kind of the hard part of fans, because they kind of feel this disconnect. We're in an era of social media. You actually have more interactions with the athletes than you do in ever, but there's this greater disconnect that's growing between the fans and the players, because year after year it's changing. It's the same jersey, but different players year after year.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that on the court, right? First of all, fans aren't as invested because every year the name on the back is changing, so they don't know who they're going to cheer for. And then you look at the product that's being put on the court, and when you used to have teams that had three or four guys that have been there 3 or 4 years, and they're 22, 23 years old now, and have been able to go through that whole career with one coach and work on their craft, you don't have that nowadays.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, too, because players are almost older than ever because some players are staying back from the draft and that COVID year.
Yeah.
But even then, it's that development is lacking.
Right.
Yeah, and that Final Four team you were on, it's like you had a bunch of stars, but you guys were all, older. You had been there, you had done your time. And I guess the way I see it is how are you even supposed to build your team identity or even get close with your brothers? I mean, obviously you're going to be friends, but you guys, I mean, how close was that Final Four team?
Man, it's still close.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best guys, some of my best friends still from that team. We stay in touch. I think the most important part for me out of that team was great basketball players, but better men. From the coaching staff all the way to, even our trainers. Just great camaraderie and great people.
It was so cool to see because, like you said, we saw that development. Each year there was a little bit of improvement year after year. Was there a point in that 2015 year that you're like, okay, this team we're Final Four built? Was it before the year? Was it in the season? When was kind of that feeling that you're like, okay, we're going to make a run?
So we felt that in our junior year. It took a while. We were starting to bring Oklahoma basketball back, right, to the national headlines. And so going into our junior year, we weren't ranked. I believe that might be a lie. But we weren't ranked how high we think we should be. And I think we got about 10 games in and started to get up into the top 15. And we knew, hey, if we can keep going, then we can make something special out of this. And I think – we're looking at this NCAA game right now, our Big 12 championship game, and I think when you look at the best teams, it's who can get hot at the right time, and so we were able to do that our senior year.
It's kind of a science because you see teams peak and then they valley, and then that's what makes college basketball so fun towards the end of the year because you got these smaller schools that are hot and they're playing good basketball. And it's going to be kind of interesting. It's been interesting last year and this year. We've seen more upsets than ever because maybe some of those smaller schools were able to hold more of the roster than they were the year before.
And that's what I was about to say to you is how much do you think goes into those smaller schools got guys that have been there 3 or 4 years versus, your big schools who are all new?
A lot. I think one really good example of it, I mean, there's actually 2 last year in the national championship. You got Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. Both really good programs. San Diego State definitely has a little more history than Florida Atlantic, but they had a core group of guys that developed year after year, and that's why they found themselves cutting down the nets in the year. And then FAU this year, even with the transfer portal, NIL, they were able to keep 2 or 3 guys that definitely had opportunity elsewhere. And so they actually went to a harder conference, Florida Atlantic that is, but it'll be interesting to see like when it comes down to crunch time, like how far they will go because they do have that continuity.
Yeah, when you get to the last 3 or 4 minutes of a game and it's pretty close, I'm always going to pick the guys that have been together the longest. So I don't care about talent. I'm going to pick the guys who have chemistry.
Yeah, let's go. Let's circle back to that Final Four year a little bit. One of still the greatest games I think Sooner fans can talk about. We didn't win, but one of the greatest games we ever watched was that triple overtime game at Allen Fieldhouse. Walk me through that game because, you'll be known playing as one of the greatest college basketball games of all time. Walk me through that game, and then kind of walk me through what is so hard about winning in Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah, so that game's pretty funny. I think we were up 7 with 2 minutes left, and you're always told going into Kansas that, if you don't pull within or get outside of double digits, you're probably going to lose the game because something happens with the refs and the stands, and with 2 minutes left that it's going to favor Kansas. And so 2 minutes left, we had a timeout. And we were up 7, and we knew we had to finish it. And I think we got back-to-back charges, and they obviously tied it. And we went to overtime, and then the game felt like it was about 3 or 4 hours long. When you've got the one thing I can say that was a knack on our team that year was, your top 4 guys played every minute of the game, and so you get into triple overtime. We've all played 54 out of 55-minute games. It's tough.
Yeah, it wears on you. And I always talk about, of course, Buddy had the amazing game. I think Frank Mason had a crazy game as well. But Frank Mason, I think it was double overtime, he had a steal out of bounds, but he was out of bounds, like guarding a guarding OU's player.
That's one of those calls that you're talking about. Yeah, that goes that just not gonna go your way.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, is that your favorite venue that you've played at? The Big 12 schools are obviously also good at basketball. It's got to be electric at a lot of them. But
Yeah.
do you have a favorite?
I think Kansas is my favorite just because of what it stands for, the history of it. I think the hardest place to play is Hilton in Iowa State.
Okay.
Just because the fans are different, right? At Kansas, they're not they're respectful. They yell at you loud, but they're respectful. They appreciate the game. They appreciate the players. At Iowa State, there's no rules, right? They appreciate the game, but they're going to let you have it as well. And so I think Hilton, what is it, Hilton Magic? Is that what it's
Hilton
called?
Magic.
Yeah, that's a tough place to play.
We saw that this year. Actually, Iowa State had their first undefeated home year
They turned it on.
since 2001.
Yeah.
And so, it's always been a tough place to play, but to have that, especially with the conference slate this year, it's kind of unbelievable. So to hear you say that is not 100% shocking.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I remember we were number 1 going in there our senior year, and my parents drove up to watch us play, and they brought my little niece Evie, who at the time was, 7 or 8 years old. There was 5 guys that got kicked out before the game because they took a sign over to my niece and it had some bad words about her uncle on there, and so that's kind of what you're walking into. And I know y'all felt that in some football places, but that's one of the only places basketball-wise that's like that.
It's kind of nasty. Yeah. Texas Tech is one for football for sure.
Yeah, and LSU and some of those places way back in the day when we played them, like the national championship. Yeah. But it's also, basketball is just so much more in your face because it's right there on the court or in the stands. Football, you have your sidelines, it's bigger, you're outside, it doesn't feel so much like just, in your face.
Yeah, and I think, it's right on top of you, and a lot of places you kind of feel at home because, or I guess, let me say that opposite. At Oklahoma, we put our visiting fans right behind the bench. At a lot of places we play at, they put them upstairs, and so you don't feel like you have anybody there.
Yeah, they make you feel
I need
on
to
an
talk
island.
to your dad about that.
Yeah, exactly. If we're going to be SEC ready, let's stick them up at the top.
Exactly.
There's always the football in SEC they do as well. They stick the bands. Like, the band should be way at the top. We should not be able to hear any SEC bands playing in the fall.
I do got to get one plug in there for the Kansas game. So I always give Buddy crap about this because he had 46 points and he's the man. And people overlooked that I had 23 and 20 or something like that game.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I'm not about stats, but I told Buddy, I said, the best game I've ever had, and you do 46. That's not right.
How are you going to outshine me like that?
Right.
Yeah. And I always think about the free throw, too. Kadeem had that. They had that over the back. I cannot believe they called an over the back, and then they got that opportunity, and Kadeem missed it. I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, we had a timeout. We had a timeout before Kadeem shot those 2 free throws, and Kruger said, hey, calm down. And he said, I got this. And he was the most confident player I've ever seen, and then missed it. So.
Yeah.
Well, did you kind of like mentor him? Was he kind of like? He was a freshman, right?
Yeah, he was a freshman.
I just remember after you left, he was kind of like then our guy. But I remember I really liked watching him play.
Yeah, he was exactly what we needed, right? Somebody that didn't have to score, but would kind of guard the rim, run up and down the court pretty fast, and it didn't matter that he was a freshman because we had enough leaders on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always just go back to that Final Four team, that starting 5. Like you said, it wasn't the deepest team, but everybody has memories about the certain guys. People overlook, Isaiah Cousins was a lockdown defender. And then that game against Iowa State, he actually had, I think, like 27 points.
Yeah. I'll say this. I've been saying it since freshman year, but I'll still say it, and I would say it to Buddy. Isaiah is a better basketball player than Buddy skill-wise.
Wow.
Buddy just was able to find his niche. Obviously, Buddy's great, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about overall being able to dribble the ball, shoot, play defense, Isaiah has it. Growing up in New York, he's got that niche about him.
Yeah, they always said that he had that New York mindset.
Yeah,
he does. Definitely translated to the court for sure.
Yeah.
And then that's why I was kind of shocked, as you guys transitioned to your post-college careers. I was kind of surprised. I know Isaiah played a little bit in the G League a little bit, but I was surprised he didn't kind of find himself some role on the NBA.
Yeah, I think Isaiah is one of those guys that has to have the ball in his hands, right? He's a New York guy. He's got to have the ball in his hands, and so I think that possibly hurt him a little bit when he got into the pros or the NBA at least is, you got guys, 15, 14 guys that want the ball in their hands, and so you can't have it always. But I think he's in Spain now, or somewhere over there, and he's doing good.
I was looking up your Wikipedia before this.
I think they got my middle name spelled wrong on that one, so
I'll go spell check it.
You go edit it.
Yeah.
You played 1 year overseas?
Yeah,
Is that
I played
right?
in Japan.
Okay, how was that? Tell me
It was
about
good.
that.
I wasn't going to do it. I was going to go straight into the oil and gas. I knew if I didn't make the NBA, I pretty much wanted to be done. But my dad sat down and talked with me, and he said, "Hey, I want you to do this so you don't ever regret not doing it, and make some money while you're doing it. That way, when you come back, you can start a business or do something like that." And so I did it for a year. I really enjoyed it. In Asia, there's not a lot of English speaking. The food's not my type, and so lost a lot of weight. Was pretty lonely, but the money was good. Basketball was good.
Yeah, I always am curious about that when they do go overseas. Did they have a translator, or did the coach speak English, or how'd that kind of work?
No, so translator's the only guy that speaks English. The caveat to that is he's only there on the court.
Oh,
so I remember when I got off the airplane, you have to find a taxi to get to your apartment, and
That'd be hard.
Yeah, so it's different.
You mentioned making money while you still had your basketball career going. That kind of just in my head brings me to NIL, because obviously a lot of you guys would have killed it NIL wise. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, we heard about the transfer portal, but
yeah, I like it. I do agree there needs to be some cap on it. A 18-year-old kid doesn't need $1 million. Now that being said, I want everybody to make as much money as they can. But I remember when I was in college, if I had a couple grand a month extra, I'd have been living good. Mm-hmm. And so, but make your money. I wish I would have had it.
And that goes back to the transfer portal. I think everybody's just trying to find a way to reward these players, but they're also trying to find a way to keep them on campus,
right?
Too, because they want to reward them for coming back year after year, and there's no contracts.
I was talking about this yesterday with one of my salesmen, and I've always wondered, instead of just giving cash, what if you did like a trust fund or something that over the years you're able to accumulate it, and it'll create loyalty, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously I don't have the answers, but something like that, instead of just saying, "Hey, here's your $800,000."
Yeah. I can't imagine being in college and be like, "Hey, here's $800,000.
Come play quarterback."
Right.
You know what I mean? Most kids, back in the day, you just went there because you wanted to go there. Like you said, you left Gonzaga and wanted to come home and play for the school you wanted to play for.
I think you look at that name across the chest, right? That's why I came back to Oklahoma, is I wanted to be a part of that name. I had a lot of history with that name. I felt like I owed that to my family and friends to play for that name. And if I was able to get money doing it, that would have been a bonus. But that's why I did it.
Did you know you were going to come back to Oklahoma, or was OSU ever on the table?
Out of high school, I didn't get offered by Oklahoma.
Was Kruger there? Was that his first year? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, no, Kruger wasn't there. So I don't think they spoke to me one time.
Wow.
But so out of high school, I took a trip to Oklahoma State, Tulsa, UCLA, Colorado, Gonzaga, and picked Gonzaga. But out of high school, I would have came to Oklahoma if I would have been given the opportunity.
I think they're glad that you found your way back. I remember when you came back, because I went to Mount St. Mary's, so it's played against. I mean, I didn't play, but Mount St. Mary's played against Ryan in high school. I saw you play once, and I think you probably dropped like 45.
Y'all had some good teams back then.
They were really good.
Dalton Newsome and those guys.
Yeah, Lenny Hatchett used to coach at Del City, I think. Now, no, they were really good.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, and you also had a really good football career too. Did you ever think about lacing up the spikes instead of basketball, or was like, I'm going basketball?
No, I know I took a trip to Arkansas and Tulsa to look at playing both. At that time, my love was for basketball. When you get into football, baseball, you can do both. Football and basketball, you can't do that. And so I knew I had to pick one, and so basketball was going to be it. I was going to talk to your dad my junior, senior year. I can't remember. Trevor Knight was there, and I think we had a couple of injuries preseason. I was like,
well, come on.
Coach Stoops, call me if you need a backup. I'll learn the plays.
Should have sent your film in.
Yeah.
It was really good. I looked up. You had like 71 touchdowns.
Yeah, I had some good receivers.
Okay. With all due respect, I'm not sure Bridge Creek was loaded in receivers. I think they had a good quarterback and punted too. I looked that up.
Yeah, when you go to a small school like that, you've got to do a lot more than you would at a Norman North or Mount St. Mary's or something like that.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting back into coaching or anything like that?
I have. I would want to coach college. I think this time in my life it's not feasible with the travel part anyways, with the kids at home. But if there was ever a spot open that would stay in Norman or do something like that, I would look at it.
I think you'd be a good mentor. I always thought you got that good coach speak too.
Yeah. Would you ever consider like high school or anything other than college?
No, I get a little bit of that right now. So my dad retired out of oil and gas. He's the head coach at Bridge Creek football now, and so I help him a little bit with the quarterbacks there when I can, and then spend a little time in the gym working out kids. So that's about it.
Yeah, I tried the high school route. I coached receivers at Moore for a year, and it was great experience. You know, you love like pouring back into the kids and whatnot, but it's also different than college in the fact that all these kids are, young, and they all have their own problems at home. It's all sorts of, whereas college is, even now, it's like a lot more professional. You know what I mean? So it's a lot different and a lot more to deal with. And I was only 20 years old. I was like, I got my own problems too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think my eyes have been open with high school football. You hear coaches say, I can't coach them like I used to, and I think when in high school ball, it really is that way. When you get to college, right, that's what you expect to be coached like that. Mm-hmm. But high school, you've kind of got to watch out for how you talk to kids and how you coach them, and it's a different ball game nowadays.
You even kind of saw it yesterday. Nick Saban, he spoke with the panel of the NIL. He had a couple of very interesting quotes about, can't really coach them, and it's just not the same as it was when he started, which is obvious, but it's going to change. But really good, interesting quotes, and people were blaming Nick Saban. I'm like, I think Nick Saban understands college basketball a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT. Yeah. No, those were some interesting quotes because he's talking about like he just saw some things after the loss that he didn't really like, and just how different it all has become. And so I think it kind of was the natural time for him to retire. I mean, he was getting relatively old as well, But
I often wonder when he brought that up of was it the reactions of the players, or because now that they're making millions of dollars or whatever it is, when you get done with the loss, they're probably not upset about it, right? Yeah. They wish they would have made the national championship, but they're probably like, well, I'm going to go home and live life, right?
Hop in my G-Wagon.
Yeah, whereas when you didn't have money, it's like, man, we just lost everything we were working for.
Yeah.
And even in the pros, you have the incentives to play. You're going to win, for going to the Super Bowl, you're going to get X amount of money for winning it. And because you can't base it on play,
right?
That's not in college, so you don't even have that component.
Yeah, I wish there was performance based into it. Of I don't know what that would be, snaps played or wins or whatever it is, but I wish there was something like that.
I think fans too a lot more would be willing to give. I'm like, hey, if he made the national championship or they won a national championship, there'd be a lot more money to go around, and I think they would want to give it to the players at that point.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I think at some point we'll get to something that makes some relevant sense of NIL, but it's a mess to begin with right now.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being in it and having to deal with it.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you're still really close to a lot of the players on that team. Have you been to Buddy's house? I saw the 76ers practiced at it, and I was like, this house is crazy. Like, they were practicing at his home
in
gym.
Dallas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I used to before I had my daughters. I would go down there for a week or so, a summer, and work out with him and spend some time with him and Trey Slate. And that the last time I was there was when it was just finished built and they were just building the gym.
Is it you just accidentally said Trey Young, but are you guys like? Obviously, you're close with all of your team that you played with.
Yeah.
But as far as like the OU basketball, just alumni in general, do you guys all kind of keep up, or is like what's that kind of like? Because football, kind of everybody knows each other, even if you played different years. But it was also way bigger teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think under Kruger it was big to keep alumni together, and I'm not saying it's not now, but I think it was more. It was
the focus. For sure.
It was more of a priority, right? And so you had those ties a little better, and now it's more of just kind of who you talk to. Trey Young is around just because him and Buddy hang out in the summers, and so we see him and talk to some of those younger guys. But outside of that, no.
That's interesting.
I know, like you said, a part of it too is like they're smaller groups, so you think they would naturally gravitate more. But
yeah, I think when you look at OU football, you look at the history, right, and it's kind of a brotherhood. And I'm not saying Oklahoma basketball isn't like that, but we've had our peaks and our valleys, and so I think a little bit of that gets broke up where football hasn't had that yet.
Yeah.
How important, as a player who played in the Lloyd Noble, we know what it is. We know its shortfalls.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for the program to get a new arena, especially going forward into the SEC and into this era?
A couple different answers on this is I haven't ever cared about what I play in. It never bothered me to play in the LNC as long as I had somewhere to play and somebody to play against. Now I do on the side of where we are now in NIL, you've got to be able to recruit, to be able to hang with the SEC. Now you've got to have the nicest facilities, and so I know that has to happen for Oklahoma.
It's always the first complaint of OU fans is the LNC. I'm like, I know it's bad, but when they have gotten good crowds there, it's serviceable. It works.
I have a good time there.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem with it, but I look at some of these other stadiums, and it is, some of them are a lot nicer, but
Right.
I always liked it.
Yeah, I think you take the overall aspect of Oklahoma and you go, yeah, maybe the gym's not the best, but we're working there and we've got everything better than you do, right? I mean, some people are going to have better things than us, but not all around.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know they're actually redoing their locker rooms right now.
Yep.
Supposedly they're going to be really cool. They've got a lot of things going on. They're not in them right now, so they're in like the old media room right now.
When's that supposed to be finished?
I heard April.
Okay.
So it's going to be after the year, but brand new locker room, recovery area, some edits to the training room. So, yeah, because they did not have the Blake Griffin Center.
Oh, I wish I would have had that.
The Spangler can talk more about it, but the weight room that you guys did use, it was a glorified closet.
Yeah.
And so it's far from what the Blake Griffin Center is right now.
Yeah, we would have won a national championship if we'd have had that.
It's had development, too.
Right.
Was Bryce Daub?
Yeah, he's the man.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
Is that the strength coach?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's part of the reason we were Final Four, I believe. Yo-Yo was great. But you get that new face, you get those new workouts, flexibility, conditioning, and I think he pushed us over the top.
It's kind of like us with Schmitty now. Like he used to be here, and we were really, excelling at that level. And then Coach Wiley's great too. I mean, he was my strength coach, but now Schmitty, you can kind of tell this difference that it's making year two. This year we were better. Next year we'll be, even better. And
I love it too.
Yeah, me too. Strength coaches make a big difference just in your mindset and everything.
Those boys got muscle on them now.
Man, yeah.
They look the part.
Yeah.
Especially when you're rolling into the SEC and they got a big 350-pounder guy.
Yeah, lineman.
But people forget, too, you're spending a lot of time with the strength coaches at times. I mean, especially in the summer. You're spending more time with them than you are with your coaches. So you're going to spend a relationship with them. You're going to develop with them. So they have so much more of an influence than a lot of people think.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to tie that back to what we were talking about loyalty and transferring every year. It's each team wants your body to be different. So when I was at Gonzaga, they wanted me at 245. When I come to Oklahoma, they want me at 230. That's where they thought I'd be the best playing. And so if you're transferring every year, how do you build that rapport with your strength coach? How do you get your body the way they want it?
You don't. And often, because you're sitting in the portal, you might not even be on a campus training. So you're missing that amount of time of development.
Yep.
And you're seeing a lot of teams, too, when you start play in November, you may have only played 2 months of practice together when you start. And so I think that's why it's really interesting. I think we've kind of seen even the NCAA tournament kind of be more unpredictable because these teams have only played 6 months together. So they might be gelling at that point. They might not be gelling. Just more unpredictability.
I agree.
Yeah. I've seen you at a couple Thunder games.
Yeah.
Are you a big Thunder fan? Of course, big Oklahoma guy.
I am a big Thunder fan. I don't go much. Kids sports every night, but my company has some tickets, and so every once in a while I get to take some of my clients to the games and enjoy it.
What do you think about just because coming from a former big man, like the evolution of these guys like Wembanyama and even Chet, you know what I mean? Is it just
it's ridiculous.
Does it kind of blow your mind, a little bit?
Yeah, I remember I got my first taste of that with Embiid at Kansas, right? A little different than those new guys like Chet, but
future MVP though.
Right.
With Embiid.
Yeah, when you talk about length, when you talk about size, skill set, it's pretty crazy for those guys to be able to move their bodies like that and operate like a 6-foot guard when they're 7'1".
Yeah. Or even taller, yeah.
Yeah, or even taller. Yeah, he's what, 7'4"?
7'4", I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
The way he can ball handle just blows my mind.
Right.
That's all. You know what I mean?
You don't think it's physically possible, and then he does it. I know Chet. He's had a little bit of lows, but he's already better than I thought he would be in 2 years. Yeah. He's just far blown at my expectations.
Yeah, I think one thing that scares me with him in Oklahoma City is during the year, they kind of just play the game and try to win. When you get to the playoffs, they kind of tie it down and get after it. And I'm scared with his weight, they're gonna go one-on-one and punish him under the rim just because he doesn't have that behind him yet.
Exactly. They kind of go for those one-on-one matchups.
Right.
And when you're playing them 5 games in a row, they're really going to exploit that.
Even if you're playing Minnesota in a 7-game series, you got Cat and Rudy Gobert every game. So sometimes he might have an easier opponent the next night in the regular season, but those guys could start to take a toll for sure.
Yeah, because you even look at Trey during the year. They keep him out. They don't pull him to the post. When he gets to the playoffs, like when he did against the Knicks, they posted him up every time, which you can send to help, but when it's a big on a big, there's not much help you can send.
Yeah, I always joke around. Brahms needs to just be feeding Chet double cheeseburger, fries, and a shake like 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Because I don't care his metabolism, that'll put you some weight on you. Yeah. Brahms missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Or Arby's.
Arby's. Yeah. Big Arby's guy over here. I'm hoping they'll sponsor the pod. Just flew out there this Tuesday, or it was last week, Tuesday. Filmed a commercial for Arby's just because I was talking trash on them. So they were trying to change my mind. They kind of did. I'll spoil the commercial a little bit. Didn't sign an NDA, so I can say that. But they kind of did. But the Arby's commercial, look out for it later this March.
I was keeping up with you out there. I was seeing what you were doing.
Yeah. It was pure comedy. I was a little worried just because it happened so fast. They replied to my tweet and DMs me, and then had a casting agency reach out to me. And they're like, hey, we want you to fly out next week. And I was like, next Monday? I'm like, to where? They're like, Minneapolis. I'm like, is this real? I need some proof. And then I did a little due diligence on myself, and it went well. And they covered everything. So
how did taking PTO go? Hey, I'm going to do an Arby's commercial. He's like, are you kidding?
Explaining to my boss the reasoning behind my PTO on a random Tuesday was a little interesting. But he's a cool guy. So he's like, hey, go for it. Look forward to seeing you on TV. And I was like, I look forward to seeing myself on television too. So they said it'll be out later in March or early April. So hell, we might be in the Final Four and then turn to a commercial and you'll see me on Arby's. Eat some Arby's. It was quite the time. So I'm open to them sponsoring the pod. So I'm just lobbing that one out there. The family business presented by Arby's. We'll have a curly fry. It'll be a good time.
Deal.
Yeah. Do you ever hoop at all still?
No.
Oh, okay. I was gonna offer you to hoop. George and I hoop every Sunday. So
we're at
this private gym in Oklahoma City. But it's about a little north of Frontier City. But we hoop. You would murder us would be a little bit lightly. We are not great basketball players. George is pretty good. He can shoot the ball, but I'm not. I'll foul you every time, but I was going to offer you to come there.
I played in the Skins League for a couple years when I got back, just to kind of stay in shape, stay with some of my buddies, and I gave that up about 2 years ago. So
they had a lot of good play. I mean, I know Trey's gone through there. Lindy played a lot in there. A lot of really good basketball players played in that league. You've
got some basketball players that think they're going to get an NBA contract from scoring 30 and that, and I'm like,
it's not how,
okay, buddy.
Not how it works. Yeah.
All right. We'll believe it when we see it. Ryan, really appreciate you being on today. Hopefully we'll have you again on next year. We'll have a whole other slew of things to talk about. Of course, everything will change by then.
Right.
But we appreciate you being on. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate everybody's support. And remember to keep it in the family.